In April, I made a video about Secure Act 2.0, which passed the House in March that can change the way you contribute to your retirement savings, like the 401k, 403b, 457, and IRAs. HR 2954 was sent to the Senate, and the Senate is now proposing their version of the Secure Act 2.0, and it's called the Rise and Shine Act, which stands for, you ready for this? Retirement Improvement and Savings Enhancement to Supplement Healthy Investments for the Nest Egg Act. They probably could have just called it Retirement Enhancement Act or something simple, but hey, you do you, Senate. Anyway, something that really stood out from the Rise and Shine Act was that it's going to implement a process to allow employers to create emergency savings account inside your 401k or other employer-sponsored retirement accounts. This bill already has bipartisan support, and it's been endorsed by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And I'm excited about this bill because over half of Americans can't come up with $1,000 in emergency expenses. When people don't have a rainy day fund to cover $1,000 in emergency medical expenses, car insurance deductible for a car accident, or emergency home repair, they turn to payday loans that charge you a 600% interest rate or credit cards with 20% interest rates. And it becomes a never-ending cycle between borrowing and repaying loans. And I've met people in the past that barely have any cash in their savings because they believe cash is just a loser in inflation. That may be true, but if you get into a car accident tomorrow and you need to come up with $1,000 to pay for the insurance deductible, are you going to sell your investment and pay 15% on capital gains tax or 24% in federal income tax for the short-term capital gains? And would you really want to sell your investments now during a bear market at a significant loss? Would you really want to borrow from your 401k and delay your retirement? If you're brand new to my channel, my name is Sai and welcome. So in this video, I'm going to talk about how the Senate wants to link your retirement and emergency savings plan, how Rise and Shine and Secure 2.0 can give you more retirement options, and what I would do with the emergency savings plan if it gets signed into law. Even if you're someone who already has a fully funded emergency fund, share this video with your friends and families so they're aware of the big changes coming to their retirement plans. By the way, if you're someone who's always writing emails, working on school papers, or building a resume for your next dream job, you should check out Grammarly. Grammarly can proofread your writing and save you so much time and make your writing look professional. And I've been using Grammarly Premium since 2018, and it saves me so much time from having to proofread my emails. I also use Grammarly to proofread my resume, which got me a job paying 6 figures in salary. You can get the free version of Grammarly, and I will put my affiliate link in the description below. After you watch this video, I strongly encourage you to check out the video I made about Secure Act 2.0, and I will link that video in the description below. Let me show you the differences between Secure 2.0 and Rise and Shine. The Senate Help Committee, which stands for Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions, already unanimously approved Rise and Shine. I think it was back on June 15th or June 16th. Let me show you the chart here, and keep in mind that some things in here can be outdated by the time I release this video. And in Secure 2.0, it has the automatic enrollment into the 401k or other employer plans, employer match, which gives you the traditional or Roth options, an increase in catch-up contributions for 401k between ages 62 and 64 from $6,500 to $10,000, and also making these contributions Roth. An indexing IRA catch-up contribution limit based on inflation instead of what we have now currently at $1,000, creating a national lost and found database for the 401k, delaying the RMD, or it stands for required minimum distributions, from 70.5 to 75 starting in 2032 or 2033, and allowing employers to match employees' student loan payments with a contribution to their 401k retirement plan. In Rise and Shine, it has amendments to raise the limit on mandatory cash out distributions from $5,000 to $7,000 and create an emergency savings account within the 401k, which I'll go over that more in a little bit. Rise and Shine doesn't have the catch-up contribution limit, student loan matching, or raising the RMDs from 70.5 to 75 like Secure 2.0 does. And however, the Senate Finance Committee just approved the EARN Act, which stands for Enhancing American Retirement Now Act, on June 23rd. This one contains several provisions I just mentioned, like the catch-up contribution limit, student loan matching, raising RMDs, and 70 other provisions. And some other interesting proposals are to allow Roth contributions to simple and SEP IRAs, allow retirement distributions up to $22,000 for qualified federally declared disasters, and eliminate a penalty on early withdrawals for individuals in cases of domestic abuse. If you want to read more about this, now we'll link that document in the description below. Both House and the Senate still have to negotiate and get endorsements before voting on the finalized bill, but I'm pretty confident that the new retirement bill will be passed in both chambers and signed into law by the end of this year. By the way, if you need help with your personal finances, you can schedule a free one-on-one 20-minute financial coaching session by visiting firesidechat.com/coaching. Now let's talk about the emergency savings account inside the employer-sponsored retirement plan. So what would happen is you get an extra option in your contribution option. You know how you have options to contribute in pre-tax or traditional, Roth, and sometimes after-tax contribution, which is with a mega backdoor Roth. And then you have an extra option that will probably say something like emergency savings account that will be kept in cash. The purpose of this bill is to prevent people from tapping into their retirements like 401k or IRA, because when you borrow from your retirement, the growth of your retirement slows down and you have to pay interest on the repayment. If you make early distribution, then you have to pay penalties and taxes on the distribution itself. So according to the bill, under Section 801, your emergency savings account would be held as cash in an interest-bearing deposit account or in an investment or insurance product designed to preserve principal and provide a reasonable rate of return. I would guess that this account would be in something like a money market account inside a brokerage account. And all of the contributions you make are considered Roth. So what that means is you can take the cash out without paying taxes on it. You also wouldn't be charged for any unreasonable fees, restrictions, or management expenses. The maximum amount for the emergency savings account is $2,500, and it looks like it's the maximum amount you can save at any time. And the employer has the option to set a lower cap. I would guess that the contribution limit would increase over time to adjust for inflation, but we'll see if they'll add that provision in the bill. You have the control to adjust the percentage of your contribution to emergency savings just as you do with pre-tax or Roth. You're going to be automatically enrolled to set aside 3% of your after-tax salary for the emergency account until you have $2,500 saved. In EARN Act, or Enhancing American Retirement Act, one of the provisions allows you to take distributions from 401k or IRA up to $1,000 a year and have the option to repay the distribution within 3 years. You have to be able to justify that the distribution is used for expenses related to personal or family emergency expenses. Now, it's not clear yet if the Rise and Shine Act would adopt this provision in EARN Act, but I'm sure they're going to come up with something before they finalize the bill. By the way, you can get your free FIRE resources by visiting firesidechat.com/contact. You can also check out the Fireside Chat shop, and I have all of my stuff on my bookshelf at firesidechat.com/shopping. Whether I'm going to enroll in an emergency savings account and my retirement account will depend on the interest rate it pays. My wife and I already have a fully funded emergency fund that can cover our medical, dental, vision, car insurance, and 6 months of expenses during unemployment. If we decide to open emergency savings account inside our retirement accounts, we need to make sure we have the following criteria. We want to have easy access to the emergency savings account inside the retirement account. We would like to see brokers that run our 401ks to make sure that we can transfer that cash to our checking account within a day or two. The problem I usually see with brokers is it takes several business days to transfer money from the brokerage account to the checking account. And if we have an emergency and we need the cash immediately, we want to see that cash right away. And we shouldn't have to wait for days before we can use it, right? I also wonder if we will have to provide a written justification to touch that cash, or if we could just use it without providing any reasons. And according to the JP Morgan Chase Institute, the lowest income households need at least $2,500 to cover emergency expenses. I hope every employer creates an automatic enrollment for their employees for their emergency savings account, because it's going to help millions of Americans from tapping into their retirement, taking out a payday loan, or carrying credit card balances month over month. From my experience as a financial coach, most people don't really think about saving for an emergency fund because they're already struggling to pay their bills. It would be easier to have the automatic contribution because then they wouldn't have to think about it as much. So it's almost like it's a psychological thing, right? Having a short-term cash reserve like an emergency fund is extremely important, especially when there's a lot of uncertainty in our economy. And I always recommend having at least 6 months of expenses and a rainy day fund on top of these expenses in a completely separate high yield savings account. If you're in a dual income household where your spouse can cover the entire expenses while the other spouse is unemployed, then I would recommend saving at least 3 months of expenses in an emergency fund. As soon as you get out of that paycheck to paycheck cycle, you want to have a buffer in your checking account that can serve as a cash reserve so you don't have to worry about your checking account going below zero. And I'm optimistic about the new retirement bill since it has tremendous bipartisan support. It could potentially help millions of Americans living paycheck to paycheck. And if you want to know more about how to save for an emergency fund and invest for your future, be sure to check out these 2 videos. So with that said, I appreciate you watching my video. Don't forget to subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next video. Have a good one.